Chapter 3 The Dominant Primordial Beast. As Buck grows further acclimated to the harsh demands of the Alaskan wilderness, his rivalry with Spitz grows into bitter hatred and open mutiny. As the lead dog, Spitz feels his position is threatened by Buck's strength and cunning. While Buck avoids conflict in order to survive, Spitz actively tries to provoke a fight with Buck to force a battle for mastery that will end their rivalry permanently. One bitterly cold night, when Buck tries to return to his nest after dinner, he finds it occupied by Spitz. Pushed to his limit by cold and exhaustion, Buck finally attacks Spitz, who is taken by surprise by Buck's ferocity. Francois wakes up and encourages Buck to fight. Suddenly, a pack of starving huskies from a neighboring Native American encampment descend on the party, devouring the contents of the grub box and attacking Francois, Perrault, and the sled team. Spitz treacherously uses the confusion to attack Buck again while he is distracted. Francois and Perrault try to help their dogs, but are compelled to save the rest of the food from the huskies. The team, led by Billy, races away across the ice from the hunger-maddened dogs. Spitz attacks Buck during the retreat, trying to push him off his feet and into the pack of starving dogs to be devoured. But Buck recovers and joins the other dogs in the forest. The entire team is wounded and spends the night huddled together for warmth. In the morning, the dogs return to camp, where Francois and Perrault are reassembling the chewed leather harnesses eaten by the starving huskies. Francois examines the wounded dogs and suggests some of them might get rabies from the encounter. As they make their final push to Dawson, injuries and the broken ice of the Yukon River over which they travel cripple the team. Over and over, the party falls into the freezing water beneath them and must stop to dry out over a fire before continuing. When the terrain is impossible to pass, Francois and Perrault must hoist the dogs over a cliff, one by one, with a makeshift rope. Buck's soft feet are no match for the harsh conditions, and Francois has to make tiny moccasins for him until his foot pads become hardened enough to do without. One morning, a dog named Dali is struck with the rabies that Francois predicted and starts to chase Buck, who instinctively fears her and runs for his life. After a harrowing chase, Buck hears Francois calling to him and turns towards the camp, trusting that he will be saved. Francois dispatches Dali with an axe to the head, and Buck nearly collapses with exhaustion. Spitz takes this opportunity to attack Buck again, but is savagely beaten by Francois. Perrault remarks that one day Spitz will kill Buck, but Francois believes that Buck will be the victor. As the conflict between Spitz and Buck continues, Spitz is perplexed by Buck's endurance and resourcefulness, which is unusual in dogs brought newly to the traces. Buck's unique mix of desire for mastery and respect for the law of club and fang allows him to face Spitz with patience and cunning, and as the days pass, their struggle for dominance escalates. Buck instigates mutiny by undermining Spitz's authority, preventing him from bullying the other dogs and keeping them disciplined. This frustrates Francois, who struggles to keep the dogs working together without Spitz's unifying leadership. When the team pulls into Dawson, Buck sees many dogs working as he does, and each night he hears them howling at the moon together. Buck joins them in a wolf song and feels pulled back to a primitive time before humans invaded the Yukon. After a week in Dawson, Perrault decides that he will break the record, making the run back to Daiya. The dogs are rested, and other sled teams have cleared the path they broke coming into Dawson. However, the team is still impeded by the ongoing struggle between Buck and Spitz. While Buck, who has learned to love his work, continues to pull the sled faithfully, he finds even more pleasure in stirring his fellow sled dogs into mutiny against Spitz. One night, as the team camps at the mouth of the Tahkeena River, a snowshoe rabbit stirs them into a chase. The dogs of the Northwest Police join them, and Buck leads the rush of nearly 60 dogs after the rabbit, ecstatic and bloodthirsty, completely caught up in the chase. Spitz cuts around the pack and heads off the rabbit, seizing it in his jaws and breaking its back in midair. Frustrated and still keyed up from the chase, Buck plows into Spitz, and their final showdown begins. The other dogs circle the fight, waiting to devour the loser. Spitz initially has the upper hand, his years of fighting experience allowing him to avoid Buck's attacks and draw first blood. However, because Buck can fight by intellect as well as instinct, he soon learns Spitz's maneuvers and manages to break his foreleg with his teeth. He breaks the second foreleg, and Spitz struggles to stay upright. Buck sets in for his final attack and pushes the snarling Spitz to the ground, standing back as the pack descends on the defeated dog. Buck doesn't join in devouring Spitz, but he watches his adversary's demise with intense satisfaction.